Patrick Harvie is the co-leader of the Scottish Greens. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Are you satisfied John Swinney has been completely transparent on the issue of legal advice?
John Swinney clearly dug his heels in for far too long before he released the legal advice from external counsel. But when it became clear that his position was untenable and we said we would vote for no confidence in him if he refused, he's then provided it and it's been published. When it was published, you saw Conservatives, amongst others, saying it was some sort of devastating blow, that it was a bombshell revelation. It's not credible for them now to say that it's inadequate for the committee to draw any conclusions. And this committee process, I'm afraid, is now descending into farce.
Well, before we get to that, let me come back to my question, because you haven't actually answered it. Are you satisfied that John Swinney has been completely transparent?
I wouldn't say that he's been completely transparent, and he's certainly been far too slow. But he has now.
So what has he not been transparent on?
But he has now provided, finally, too late in the day, I agree, but it's been done now, and it's been put into the public domain, the legal advice from external counsel. And the question that the committee wanted to know, and what is now clear, is that there was a difference of opinion for a time between the Lord Advocate, the government's primary source of legal advice, and their external counsel, their external legal advisors. That is clear. That's in the public domain now. What we need is for the committee to produce a report that is focused on the substance, the really important matter of how we ensure that investigations into sexual harassment claims are taken seriously and dealt with the seriousness that they deserve, and the complainants are protected in the future.
You accept that Mr. Swinney was too slow at releasing this information, yes, dug his heels in your words. You also accept that even at this stage, Mr. Swinney has not been completely transparent, but you don't believe that that would be enough to cost him his job. That's the position of the Greens.
I mean, if he had been completely transparent through this entire process, he would have provided that much sooner. He didn't. He should have done. And we made it.
But you're saying even now he's not been completely transparent.
Well, you asked me about whether that was what he'd been through this entire process.
No, I'm just putting the point back to you. You said that when I asked you specifically, had he been completely transparent, you said no, he still hasn't been completely transparent. What I'm trying to ascertain from you as to why, in those circumstances, you don't believe that Mr. Swinney should lose his job.
Well, I think you're splitting hairs about what "had he been" means. The information, the legal guidance, is now public. It should have been far sooner. But look, there are some people who are clearly just interested in the political theatre of this. They want to gain a political scalp.
Does that include Andy Whiteman, then? Because he voted for the motion.
What I want to know is, what does the committee have to say about the investigation of sexual harassment allegations? Look, we've seen in the last few weeks the kind of organisations which are experts in sexual harassment in the workplace, which advise organisations and complainants, say very clearly that the political farce this has turned into is having a chilling effect on people who want to make complaints, mostly women who want to make complaints about the behaviour of powerful men. We cannot allow this issue to be turned into this piece of political theatre simply because the Conservatives have nothing serious to offer Scotland other than conspiracy theories.
Well, you say it's political theatre. Does it not concern you as regards democracy? Because Linda Fabiani, the convener of the committee, has written to Mr. Swinney saying that the committee continues to be extremely frustrated that evidence sought by the committee for months was being sourced and published in the final days of this inquiry. Some of the evidence released after Nicola Sturgeon gave evidence to the inquiry. And the Deputy First Minister has confirmed to the committee that no minutes were held of key meetings with Council in November. Does any of that give you pause for thought?
Yes, and I've expressed serious concerns about some of that past behaviour. And if John Swinney had dug his heels in and maintained that past behaviour, his position would have been untenable. But at the same time, you have to recognise that there have been members of the committee who actually cast judgment before they'd even heard the First Minister's evidence. Members of the committee who came to the parliamentary chamber and behaved as though every word that came from the lips of Alex Salmond was cast iron truth before they'd heard the rest of the evidence. What we have is a committee that should have been focused on the substance, of how sexual harassment allegations are investigated and how to ensure that women who make such complaints are never failed again in the future. They have apparently abandoned their focus on that matter as substance
and I completely
and are now
understand
purely
that
interested in
point.
party politics.
But what about the wider point here about how the Parliament operates, about the democracy in Scotland, the fact that, as you say, information was withheld, ministers dug their heels in and argued against giving the committee information, the fact that no minutes were held of key meetings with Council in November. Does that, where do we go with that in terms of the public getting a wider understanding of what went wrong with that?
Well, again, if people have constructive proposals about how Parliament can hold ministers to account and ensure that documents are produced in the future, then I'd like to hear those constructive proposals.
Well, you're an MSP. I mean, what would you like to see happen?
What we have instead of constructive ideas about how to improve anything is simply conspiracy theories and badly drawn memes on the internet about how Scotland is a one-party state. It's a piece of nonsense, and we all know it.
The Tories say that you are ultimately in the SNP's pocket. How do you respond to that?
Well, the Conservatives throughout the session have voted with the SNP more often than the Greens have. They don't like admitting that, but they have. We've held the government to account on many issues. We've had a far bigger influence on government policy and spending choices than any other opposition party by exerting that influence, not by trying to say that everything the government do is some sort of evil conspiracy, but by positively putting forward ideas that will improve the lives of the people of Scotland. That's what we're focused on, and I wish to goodness that every other party was focused on doing the same thing.
Was any of this connected to the support for the budget?
No.
Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. That's Patrick Harvie, who is co-convener of the Scottish Greens.